Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Mr. Wiz here. So if you're new to this channel, we build video games. Right now we're working our way through MakeCode Arcade. I've already taught an entire course on how to build games in MakeCode. Right now we're working on a mini series on the extensions, which we can use to make our games more professional and add a little flair. So today we're going to be talking about the 7-segment extension. But before we do that, I just want to take a quick peek at some extensions that I am skipping. So in MakeCode, you can click on the extension button right here, and that will open up all the possible extensions for you. We've already done several of these. Right now, we just finished darts in the last video. Edge connector would be the next one, but I'm skipping that one. And I'm skipping it because I don't have the hardware for it. So this edge connector requires you to have certain equipment with your MakeCode device. Same thing with the lighting. This requires programmable LEDs. You might remember, because we talked about it a long time ago, that with MakeCode Arcade, the games that we're building, you don't have to limit them to being played online. You can actually put them on physical hardware. In my classroom at school, we have an arcade machine that we put these games on. We also have GameGo devices, which are these smaller pieces of equipment, like Game Boys that we can put our games on, right? So you can take the games off of MakeCode and put them on physical hardware. These extensions require you to have special types of hardware, right? They require you to have programmable LEDs, or this 20-pin edge connector, which I don't have and I've never actually used. I would like to look into these someday, especially the LED one. I would love to add programmable LEDs to our arcade machine, but we haven't gotten around to doing that yet. Radio broadcast is another one we're going to skip because it requires your device to have the ability to send and receive radio signals. The cool thing about that is that if you do have hardware that can do that, this allows two players to send signals to each other's equipment and interact with each other in unique ways in the game. Servo requires hardware as well. I believe this one is for equipment that shakes or vibrates, like a vibrating controller, which is kind of cool. You know, you're taking damage or whatever, the controller would vibrate. But yeah, again, specialized equipment. So we're looking at the 7-segment today. We will also, just skipping ahead a little bit, we will also be skipping the Adafruit ones here because, again, that requires this special equipment. Except for this middle one. This middle one here doesn't actually require any equipment. All this one is, this is the smallest extension they have that I know of. This one just has pictures. It has sprites. So if you want to use this one your own to check it out, feel free to do so. I think it only has maybe 4 or 5 sprites. But when you click on it, they will be added to your gallery as just pre-existing characters that you can use in your games. Not enough to make a whole video about, but it's there if you ever want to use it. Okay, today we're doing 7-segment. 7-seg is what it's called here. So just like it shows in the picture, this extension allows you to create this type of numbering or even lettering. So we'll talk about that. This 7-segment, it's what's the word I'm looking for? It's retro. It's very retro. If you think about old alarm clocks used to use this sort of thing, you may still have equipment in your home that uses the 7-segment style. Maybe your microwave or the clock on your stovetop, right, might use this sort of setup. It's something we don't see super often in modern technology, but it definitely has that retro feel, and it can be used in your games. This is not an extension that I love because I don't really use it very often, but it is something you could use if you want to. It's pretty easy to use, pretty straightforward. So I'm kind of on the fence as far as how much I like it. I do feel that it is only moderately useful, but I'm going to go ahead and show you how it works. So once I've downloaded that extension by clicking on it, you'll see in the toolbox, it appears right here, just called 7seg. And when I click on it, I have options. I have a set my counter. I also have set my digit. We'll talk about the differences in those. So these are the blocks for the counter. These are the blocks for the digits. Basically, the big difference that I found when playing around with these is that it seems like my digit is really designed for individual numerals or letters, whatever you're using there. They're really designed for individual ones, whereas my counter is designed for bigger numbers, right? So let's look at my counter first. Set my counter to counter. So this is just creating the counter, or it starts off as a 0 right there in the middle of the screen. You can see there. If I click on the plus sign, this is what allows me to edit it. So here I can change the font itself, which is kind of cool. So right now it's set to thick. I can change it to thin. I can change it to, so see how big a difference thin made? I can do narrow, I can do medium. There's multiple varieties here that I can use to adjust kind of how the font works on the 7-segment image. There is one here that says blank as well. I don't really understand why you would use that one because it just makes the number disappear when I use it. If you know more about the blank, let me know. Maybe it's there to, maybe you don't want your number to appear all the time. Maybe that's their version of invisible. I don't know. But I'm going to use medium for now. Yep, that looks good. All right, then over here I have the option of changing the size. I don't have a lot of variety with this, unfortunately. I can either go full or I can go half. Full or half. Now, when you're half, you can still change the font. So if I kept it to the half size, I would probably want to do either the thin or the narrow. Would probably look better. Oh, the narrow didn't look like it changed much. Let's try thin. Yeah, thin looks better, I feel like, on the half size. But on the full size, you might want to use a bigger font. Okay, then we have the number of digits. So you have to decide how many digits do you want your code to have. Is it going to have 1, 2, 3, 4? You kind of decide there, right? So you can set up however many digits you want it to have right there. So that's all part of creating the counter. Then we have these 4 counter blocks. This one changes the color, so that's pretty self-explanatory. This one, so, well, here, before I grab that, we have set and we have change. So both of these do basically the same thing, but set creates it and change changes it. Duh, right? So set, we have a drop down. We've got 3 options here. Set count is what's setting the number. So maybe I want it to start at 999. If I do that, then there we have 0999. Now I kept the 0 first because I have this set to 4 digits. If I change it to 3 digits, it would just show 999. But what happens if I make it less than 3 digits? If I make it 2 digits, it doesn't work. So we do have to make sure that we have the correct number of digits for whatever our number is going to be. All right, I'm going to set it back to 4. And then I want you to notice the other option that we saw there. In addition to count, they had X and Y. So this is the X and Y position. Now you might be asking, why do we need that? Can't we just set up its position using the normal position block? And the answer is no. No, you cannot. So this is my one. Well, I have a couple negatives with this extension. But the main negative that I have is that when you set up the counters or if you set up the digits, they do not count as sprites. So all the blocks that you're used to using with sprites, you cannot use on these. So I cannot set their position like I would set a sprite's position. If I wanted to change the scale and make it a different size than the ones they have, same error, right? And if you click on the error message, it basically says the property scale is private and only accessible within the class digit counter. So basically what that means is that counters are not scales. I'm sorry. Counters are not sprites. So we can't use the normal blocks that we would use with sprites. All these blue blocks that I can use with all sorts of sprites, I can't use with my counters. So it does limit their usefulness. All right, so going back to them, I can change their X and Y because they allow me to here. I'm actually not going to change the X. I'm going to change the Y. I want this number to be at the top of the screen. All right, I need it to be a little farther down so I can see the whole thing. Let's try 20. Oh, that's too far down. Let's try 10. There we go. So I've got the number at the top of my screen where I can use it. So why would you want to use one of the 7 segments? What would be the purpose of it? Well, that's really up to you. I find it, the only time I really find it useful is if I want something different than the normal score or lives or countdown, right? So in the info section, you've seen these before if you've watched my videos. You can set score, you can set lives, you can set countdowns, and they work just fine, right? So if I want to put a countdown on my screen that was 1,000 seconds long, what it would do is it would put it at the very top and it does the little countdown there, right? And that's fine. But the 7 segment can be a fun alternative for this. So it's a little bit more intimidating, I feel like. It's a little bit, it's a little bit scary almost. So let's say I'm making a game and time is super important. I could put this up here with that 999. I can put an on-game update, and I could have every time it updates to change the count by -1. Right? Now, how often do I want to update? Let's do every 100 milliseconds. So every 0.1 seconds, it's counting down. Now I have a really fast countdown, which is quite intimidating, right? So that could be very nerve-wracking for the player as they're watching the time go by. Or maybe it could be for points, where every time they defeat an enemy or they do something good, it goes up because it's counting their score. So that could be a celebratory thing. But it's very big and bold. So I would only use 7-segment when you want something like that, when you want to make a big bold statement as far as the number goes. So great intimidation factor for countdowns, especially if you add like a sound to it. So maybe I don't want it to go this fast. Maybe I want it to happen every 1 second, and I could throw a sound effect in there to add to the intimidation, where I don't know if you guys can hear this or not. That's kind of scary, right? Now, 900 seconds is a long time. If I was going to do something like that, I'd make it a much smaller time. But that'd be a great way to intimidate a player as they're playing a game where countdown is happening and you want them to be nervous about running out of time, right? Okay, so that's how the my counter works. Pretty straightforward. Let's look at the second part of this, because the second part of this was the digits. If I grab a set my digit to a 7-segment digit, it creates the one number. If I click the plus sign, I don't have as many options as I did with the counter. I still have the same fonts, so that's nice. I can still set that up. There's nothing here about size, and there's nothing here about how many digits, because it just has the one digit. But I can set the value from 0 to 9. So I can decide what I want that value to be, and what I want the font to be, and there it is. So if I wanted to do multiple of these, I would have to create multiples of them, which makes it a little bit more inconvenient for numbers. So if you're doing big numbers, counter is going to be the easiest way to go. But there are some stuff in here that you might still find useful. So here I can set the value, so I can change the value of it to whatever I want it to be right there. I can also change the X and the Y, just like the last one. So I can still change its position. We'll put it at 10, put it up at there at the top of the screen like we did the last one. Oh, okay. I guess it's because it's bigger font. It needs to be farther down. Let's try 20. There we go. All right. So I still have those options to set and change. Oh, these bubbles, if you have forgotten, these little bubble options are just to pull the values from the object, right? So down here, we got some new ones. Set display value to, set display color to. So display color is just like the other block. All it does is change the color. That's pretty straightforward. But this one is new. So display value might sound an awful lot like the one that just had value, but there is a difference here. It's a drop down. If you click on it, it has the numbers 0 through 9, but it also has letters. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Doesn't have all the letters of the alphabet. There's a few letters that are missing because some letters don't work good with 7-segment. So you'll notice there's no Q on here, for instance, because you can't do the line with the Q, right? So not all numbers are shown. I'm sorry, not all letters are shown, but a lot of them are. So I could change it to the letter F, whatever the case may be, right? So this could be kind of cool if you wanted to do text with 7-segment. The digit route is going to be probably the way you want to go. Why would you do that? It's really up to you and the style of your game, I guess. There are much, much, much easier ways to add text to your game, which we've already talked about some of them in basic ones in the videos before. But in an upcoming extension, I'm going to show you guys the really creative way of adding text to your game where it actually turns text into sprites, which means that all this stuff that you can only do with sprites, you can actually do with text, such as setting its position, setting its size, and all that jazz, right? So there are better ways of doing text than this, but this is the way that you would do it with that 7-segment style. All right. And then down here, set size. So you can still change the size from full to half. It's just a separate block. It's not part of the main block like it was with the other one. So I can still shrink it down to half size. So maybe I want to make a message that says, have a nice day or something like that. I could do that with this. It would just require me to code every single letter. So it is a little timely doing that sort of thing. But it's an option. So now you know how to use 7-segment. If you learned something new today, please click that like button. If you're not already subscribed, please subscribe. And I look forward to seeing you guys in the future videos. I'm going to show you a lot more extensions to go over. The next one would be color-coded tile map. That's a fun one. So that'll be our next one. But there's a lot more. And as I've mentioned in the past, once I finish going through all these recommended, I'm going to show you some extensions that are not on the recommended list, some of my personal favorites that I have found on forums and that students have shown me. So a lot more to look forward to. See you guys later.